What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of For the Love of Wrestling. I am, of course, your host, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Happy Monday here on the Casa D18 Studios. It is a chilly day today up in Victorville, California, where I am. Still morning for us here, just 9 o'clock in the morning. Hope everybody is having a good Monday so far. Hopefully, it is not too much of a manic Monday, as the Bengals once said, but I digress. As always, we are here this Monday to discuss the weekend shows that occurred in professional wrestling and sports entertainment on television: Smackdown, Rampage, and Collision. We will be going in that order today. And before I even really get too deep into what all happened and my thoughts on the shows for the weekend, let me just say that I felt across the board that it was just a flat weekend in shows. SmackDown was okay. Rampage and Collision were so-so. Like maybe there was just a lot going on in my life and what I was doing this weekend to where I couldn't fully enjoy them. And it's definitely not a personal bias. It's not like I'm sitting here going, well, SmackDown was a great show and AEW sucked. All across the board, I felt like all the offerings were a little bit lackluster this weekend. But let's start to get into it. We're going to discuss SmackDown first today. And SmackDown began with Bianca Belair coming out to the ring to start the show. She gives a shout out to Brooklyn. Of course, they're in the Barclays Center. She then begins to shout out her War Games teammates, Becky Lynch, Shotzi, and Charlotte Flair. And she says that her beef with Damage Control isn't over because she still wants her title back. We then get a Bayley-less Damage Control coming to the ring. 4-on-1 at this point. You got Dakota Kai, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Asuka all coming out. And Dakota on the microphone, kind of like how she has been lately here these last few weeks. Kind of stepping up, taking a little bit of those leadership reins away from Bayley now that we've got a little bit more of an influx of the Japanese talent in Damage Control. And Dakota says that Io has already beaten Bianca twice. And if she wants another title shot, she's going to have to go through all of Damage Control. At this point, Shotzi and Charlotte come out, and they say that they're also willing to run through Damage Control because they want title shots as well. And now that the odds are a little bit more even, it's still 4-on-3, but Dakota's still got her injury. The baby faces and the heels square off against each other. A brawl ensues, and the baby faces chase the heels off. We then go backstage, and Damage Control is walking through the backstage area, and they find Bayley, and they ask her where she was for the segment. And Bayley says that nobody told her that they were about to go out there and do something. Some more tension seems to arise in the group. And Dakota tells Bayley that she is going to accompany Kairi tonight for her match against Bianca Belair. We then go to our actual first match of the evening, and it's Butch representing the Brawling Brute, I guess, as Sheamus has been MIA for months, and Ridge Holland walked out on him last week, versus Bobby Lashley. And before the match, they kind of showed us a little promo from SmackDown Lowdown, which is how this match kind of came to be. Talking about how, Butch needs to make a name for himself before he can even be in Lashley's presence. So then Lashley gets on the microphone and says that when he said that Butch needed to make his name, he didn't mean by fighting him. But this was a fantastic opening match. Butch was able to get a great showing, and it really takes it to Lashley throughout a good chunk of the match. Despite the size differential, Lashley really made Butch look like $1,000,000, although obviously predictable finish. Lashley speared the crap out of Butch, get the victory. And I think that was my big problem overall across the weekend, is I feel like some of these matches were way too predictable. Like, I get that there's certain things we just need to become accustomed to, but suspension of belief is still a very big thing. There's still very much David versus Goliath stories that can be told and be made to be believable. But I think across Rampage, Collision, and SmackDown I don't think there was any real unpredictable finishes. And when every match is predictable in its outcome, it just ceases to be entertaining and becomes boring. So after the Lashley Butch match, we had a segment backstage with Nick Aldis and Paul Heyman. And Heyman asks if Aldis told Roman Reigns that Randy Orton was coming to SmackDown. And Aldis points out the fact that there is a memo that all communication with the head of the table, the tribal chief, must go through Paul Heyman. So consider this the communication. You're being notified, you tell the tribal chief. We then got Butch and Kayla backstage, and Butch says it's time for him to kind of begin forging his own path. Again, he mentions how he hasn't heard from Sheamus in months. Ridge just walked out on him, and he's willing to fight anybody in order to prove himself and his worth to the SmackDown roster and to Nick Aldis as the general manager. Pretty Deadly come in at this point, and they begin to mock Butch, which leads to a brawl in the backstage area. We then get Santos Escobar and Kathy, and there's a little bit of talk there about what he did to Ray and comparing it to what he's about to do with his former LWO and Legado del Fantasma family member, Joaquin Wilde. We then get Santos versus Joaquin. And again, this was a good match, and it seemed like it was a good opportunity to kind of show off Joaquin and his abilities, but Santos still got the victory. Again, unfortunately, Santos is in this point of his storytelling where he has to win. He has to prove to the world that what he did to Rey Mysterio was justified. He has to prove that it was warranted. You know, by getting all these W's, he's proving that Rey was trying to hold him back. And so it's an interesting point in the Santos story because he can't afford to lose anything right now. But that just makes every match, again, predictable because I want to see Joaquin Wilde get a little bit of shine. I'd like to see Joaquin Wilde, you know, possibly be able to branch out on his own or see him and Cruz del Toro make a decent run for the tag titles. But that can't happen until we get away from this Legado del Fantasma, LWO, Santos heel turn nonsense. We then go backstage, and Nick Aldis is with Adam Pearce, and they both are going back and forth about signing Randy Orton, since he is technically a free agent for the company right now. The Maverick, Logan Paul, then shows up, and he announces a tournament to determine who the number one contender will be to his United States Championship. Competitors in the tournament are going to be Santos Escobar, Bobby Lashley, Dragon Lee, Grayson Waller, Austin Theory, Karrion Kross, Kevin Owens, and a participant from NXT. Now, I'm already racking my brain like, okay, who are they going to have come up from NXT? Because you figure this weekend is Deadline. So there's a lot of ways this could go. You know, you've got Braun Breaker, who's in the Iron Survivor match. If he wins, he gets a shot at the title. If he loses, then he could be available for that spot. You've got Carmelo Hayes, who's in the Last Chance match tomorrow. If he loses that Last Chance match and isn't on the Deadline card, he could be in that tournament. You've got Ilya Dragunov, who's going to be defending his title against Baron Corbin. If Dragunov loses his belt, he could be the person in that tournament. Keen Mike in the chat room. What's up, Keen Mike? Saying Axiom. Axiom just had a match a week or so ago against Dragon Lee on SmackDown. You know, there's a realistic possibility, but the possibilities are endless right now with my NXT. So I'm curious to see who they're going to have be that person. Back to the segment, though, Kevin Owens comes out and begins to take some shots at Logan Paul. This brings out Waller and Theory, and we get Kevin Owens versus Grayson Waller. And again, predictable. KO got the victory here, although Austin Theory did play his role on the outside, smashing Owens' hand. And despite that, KO was able to get the W here. Main event match, Bianca Belair versus Kairi Sane. This was a good main event match, but again, predictable. Bianca's got to get through Damage Control to get a title shot, so of course, she beats Kairi Sane here. So every match Kairi has had since returning, she's now lost. Congratulations, Kairi. Welcome back to the WWE. You know, I feel bad for Kairi. She needs to get a couple of W's since she came back, but you're not going to get it against the EST when she's trying to get back to the title. And I love Bianca. Bianca is the female Cena. I've said it 100 times. I will say it. I will die on that hill with a stake of holly through my heart. Bianca Belair is the female John Cena. That's just how over she is. But again, it was a decent match, just a predictable match. And then we got our main event segment, the contract signing of Randy Orton. And of course, we have Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce out there. Adam Pearce makes the offer, you know, if you sign on Raw, you get the winner of the title match between main event Jey Uso and Seth Rollins. It's pretty fair. Immediately gets a title shot. Nick Aldis, though, has what Randy truly wants. You sign with SmackDown, I will give you the bloodline. The bloodline who attacked you, put you out of action for 18 months. I will serve them up to you on a silver platter. Of course, at this point, Paul Heyman, Solo Sikoa, Jimmy Uso come out. Shenanigans ensue. Orton signs with SmackDown, drops Aldis with an RKO, hits the turnbuckle poses as we go off the air. Again, all in all, it was an all right show. It just felt flat to me. What did you guys think of SmackDown? Let me know. Gonna do as we always do on Mondays. We're gonna buffer these reviews with a brief intermission. Going to take a look at all the upcoming special events that you can see on Open Mic Night going into next year, kicking things off with the eve of Christmas Eve Spectacular Christmas Karaoke coming up later on this month. And we are back. So, yeah, we've got karaoke, we've got game nights. We're trying to work out a few more game night themes so we can plan those into the schedule. Karaoke is booked all the way up through the end of next year. So much good stuff coming across the Jeff Meacham Network, Multiverse of Media, and Open Mic Nights. Stay tuned for that. So now we're going to roll into Rampage. And Rampage kicked off with an 8-man tag team match, and it was Daddy Magic Matt Menard, Cool Hand Angelo Parker, Alex Reynolds, and Evil Uno taking on Orange Cassidy, Hook, Trent Beretta, and Danhausen. This was just a fun curtain jerker match, typical for these individuals. Danhausen cursed Daddy Magic, pulled out Jake Hager's hat, Hook locked in Red Rum while Danhausen got a roll up for the 3 count. Very simple, very easy, again, very fun. Considering everything that Orange Cassidy has done with the international title here in the last 6 months or so, gave him a decent match without having to put in too much work. Was able to just kind of relax and chill the way Orange Cassidy does through this. Nice and easy. Next match we actually had, next we had a promo, and it was Ruby Soho and Saraya from the Outcasts with Anna Jay, and they're talking with Renee, and Saraya praises Anna Jay, saying that they need a little bit of extra help right now considering Ruby has been distracted as of late with her flirtations with Cool Hand Angelo Parker. Ange comes in at this point fresh off of his defeat and says to Anna Jay that, the former JAS 2.0, whatever they're calling themselves now, they'll be there ringside for her. And she says no, she doesn't want them there. She wants to be there on her own. And she especially doesn't want him to be there due to his interactions and everything with Ruby. We then have Tony Schiavone interviewing Steen and Ric Flair, and both men discuss their histories in Minnesota. Of course, Flair, one of Minnesota native son, if you will. They talk about wrestling at the Mall of America on the very first Nitro. They talk about tickets going on sale in 2 weeks for Revolution. Of course, Rick was Rick. There were some comments in his promo that apparently caused controversy and were deleted out of the live broadcast. Rick doing his standard, any women out there 18 to 28, you can find me at my hotel, no husbands, no boyfriends. And considering everything that went on with Vince McMahon, considering the Me Too movement and everything, considering all the controversies, the fact that TK was going after Vince and WWE when they were doing the Tuesday Night War against NXT, just not a good look to allow Rick to say that. Thankfully, they edited it out of the broadcast so that they didn't get into too much crap for it. But again, not a good look. From there, we went to Hikaru Shida, Chris Statlander, and Sky Blue all backstage. And Renee asks about building momentum. And Stat and Sky both start blaming each other for the loss of Stat's TBS title at Full Gear. Shida ends up being the voice of reason, saying that, hey, you know what? I lost my belt too, but we need to move forward. We need to get past all this. We then get a squash match, and you know how I feel about those matches. The Don Callis family squashing 3 jobbers. Like, they didn't even get to announce the jobbers. It was just completely useless. They then get on the microphone and address the Golden Jets, and it's like, look, if you're going to give them mic time, just give them mic time. There's no sense in squashing 3 jobbers. It does nothing for them. Callis says they'll continue to dominate in singles, tags, and trios matches until there's nowhere for the Golden Jets to hide. We then get Prince Nana and Brian Cage backstage with the Workhorsemen, and they say that they've got the opportunity to really impress Swerve Strickland and the Mogul Embassy tonight, as long as they can do everything they need to do. We go back to the ring. We get Anna Jay and the Outcasts versus Sky Blue, Hikaru Shida, and Chris Statlander. Good women's match. Saraya and Anna Jay really were working well together as a unit. You would consider that Saraya and Ruby would get that double team offense in. But again, with Ruby and her distractions with Cool Hand Ange, seeing something here with Saraya and Anna Jay was really good. Sky Blue, though, was able to hit the code blue, get the victory for her team. And we find out later on, well, I'll wait on that. I'll wait on that. Because it doesn't happen on Rampage. Don't need to get ahead of ourselves. Main event is Brian Cage and the Workhorsemen versus El Hijo del Vikingo, Commander, and Penta El Cielo Miedo. And this match was everything you would expect from these guys. Just great spots, great high-flying action. There was a little bit of miscommunication, which has Cage and Nana just completely abandon the Workhorsemen so that the Luchadors can get the victory here. Again, just a little bit of too much predictability going around here. You know, Penta, Vikingo, and Commander definitely been getting a push. Brian Cage, you know, you're not going to get too many victories for him if he's not wrestling with the Gates of Agony or Swerve or anything. The Outcasts seem to be crumbling ever since Tony left, ever since Ruby and Ange have been flirting with each other. Sky Blue's been on a monster push. And again, we'll talk a little bit about more when we get to the Collision results. You know, you've got Orange Cassidy, Hook, Danhausen all getting wins. Nothing really surprising here. And again, I feel like that's part of why I didn't care that much for the weekend's shows. I'm going to take another quick intermission. We're going to show you how you can follow and find all the friends of the Jeff Meacham Network Multiverse of Media. James Hebert, Noah Foster, Statboy Mike, Statgirl Dory Lou, myself, Jeff, of course, everybody else affiliated with us. So make sure that you got your screenshot features ready so you can screenshot these things. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on Instagram, on Threads, on Twix, on Facebook, and on YouTube. We'll be back in about 30 seconds. We are back, and now it's time to wrap things up and get into the Collision results and thoughts. So for Collision, we started the show, as we always do, with the standard cut shot backstage promos, kind of hyping everything that's going to be on the show. Pretty much all of our Continental Classic competitors giving their thoughts on their upcoming matches with their opponents. Match kicks off. First match of the night, we get Brody King versus Claudio Castagnoli, Continental Classic match. And this was a hell of a hard-hitting match. Both men looked very impressive. However, Brody was able to get the better of Claudio in this one and picked up the 3 points. Surprise of the weekend, if I'm being honest. I'm not trying to undersell Brody King. His size, his ability, his strength, none of that. But when you think about Claudio Castagnoli and you think about the years he's been around, you think about him in the BCC, the people he run with, and again, no seconds are allowed at ringside. I get that. But for somebody that high up on the card to take the L here really says a lot to me when it comes to Brody King, where they're maybe trying to take him in the not so distant future. So again, not upset by the outcome by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a little bit surprising for me to see Brody King pick up the W here. I'm not going to lie. We then get a backstage promo from Jon Moxley, speaking of the BCC. Talks about being banged up, bruised, how entering the tournament may have been a bad idea for him, and now he's sick and tired of being sick and tired. We then get Abaddon versus Kiera Hogan. This was a mediocre match to me. Nothing really impressive. Nothing impresses me about Abaddon. She's what you get when Shotzi and Danhausen have a kid. Like, that is Abaddon to me. Somehow she beats Kiera Hogan. Post-match, the lights go out. When they come back on, Julia Hart is in the ring. The lights go out again, and when they come back on, she's gone. So a little bit of spooky mind games there with Julia Hart in relation to Abaddon. I don't know if they're going to try to tease a Julia Hart-Abaddon feud here coming up. Maybe that'll be the next match for Julia come World's End. I hope not. I think Julia is better than that. We then have a Samoa Joe promo, and he's kind of mad about the tag team match next week against two of the Devil's henchmen. Roddy comes in and he tries to preach his theory to MJF about being the devil to him, and Joe wants no part of it. We then get Daniel Garcia versus Andrade El Idolo. Sadly, another predictable match here. I swear to God, Daniel Garcia at this point is only in the tournament to take L's and eat pinfalls, and that sucks because Garcia's got a hell of an upside to him if they can ever figure out what they're going to do. We go backstage and we get a promo from Willie Mack, longtime friend of the Jeff Meacham Network Multiverse Media. He calls out Wardlow, talking about the way Wardlow did AR Fox this past week. Willie Mack says that, when you mess with your friends, you mess with him. So I want a shot against you next week and bring a lunch because he's a big boy. It's going to be kind of cool to see Willie Mack and Wardlow next week. We then had the Kingdom versus the Iron Savages. And at the offset, the Iron Savages really got in a bunch of offense and dominated them. But the Kingdom picked up the win again. Very predictable. You figure Roddy and the Kingdom are being pushed heavily right now. There's still a lot of people that believe that they are part of the devil and the devil's henchmen, especially if Adam Cole is the devil himself. I hope not, but we'll see. We then had All Ego Ethan Page show up and cut a promo, and he issued a challenge from one Canadian to another for next week in Montreal to Kenny Omega. And it was made official, so Kenny Omega and Ethan Page are going to be a thing next week. We then had a Mercedes Martinez, Willow Nightingale back and forth promo. Was what it was. Not a fan of Mercedes, don't get it. Love Willow. This was just kind of meh for me. We then had the House of Black, Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews taking on the Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels and Matt Sydal. Again, very predictable match here. Daniels put up a great performance. Sydal didn't do a whole heck of a lot. House of Black won. Post-match, the lights go out and FTR come out. House of Black offers them the ability to join the squad, but at the end of the day, they jump FTR instead. We then get Toni Storm backstage with Renee Paquette, and she addresses Sky Blue. Sky Blue then cuts a promo responding to Toni Storm. She basically says, I'm going to keep my head up. I'm going to keep my tits out, and I'm going to shove your shoe right up your ass. So next week, it'll be Toni Storm versus Sky Blue, hot on the heels of that 6-woman tag on Rampage. That's why I said I didn't want to get ahead of myself. Sky Blue getting the victory there kind of gave her the title shot indirectly. We then get a Christian Cage promo. And this was good because for anybody out there that don't know who Edge and Christian were, this gave a nice little history as far as who Adam Copeland and Christian Cage are, how long they've known each other, and what this rivalry really means in the grand scope of things. Very well done in their production in the video package here. I will give them that. We then had El Hijo del Vikingo versus Kip Sabian. This was a good match, but predictable once again. Fast-paced action. Vikingo got the victory over Sabian. Just kind of We then had Miro attempting to go into Andrade El Idolo's locker room, but his wife, CJ Perry, stops him. And she basically tells him, long and the short of it, is that if you love me, you won't do anything to my client. And Miro promises. He backs off and promises. Main event time, and it's the American Dragon Bryan Danielson versus Eddie Kingston. Hard-hitting match between these two. You figure they go all the way back to Ring of Honor with each other. Danielson gets the victory. No surprise here yet again. Definitely was a good match, though. I mean, I didn't mind seeing Eddie Kingston get his ass beat because everyone knows I'm not huge on Kingston. But yeah, just, again, mediocre shows all the way around. And it's a bit of a bummer. I'm going to take one more quick commercial break. 40 seconds, show you all the upcoming watch-alongs beginning this Friday. with Tribute to the Troops, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. See you in about 40 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
We are back. So what did everybody else think about SmackDown, Rampage, and Collision? Am I being too hard on it? Let me know in the comments. Want to just take a moment here with a couple other shills. Make sure you go back into the archive. This past Friday, the He-Man, James Hebert, and myself engaged in a little friendly discourse and discussion across the Jeff Meacham Network multiverse of media. Is CM Punk being back in the WWE what is best for business? I represented the pro side. He represented the con side. Very good. Little over an hour conversation between the two of us with Jeff Meacham moderating it. Also, go back to the archives. This Saturday, Open Mic Night welcomed Gino Told You So, a modern-day journeyman who's performed in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, Texas, and all over. He's been all around the lower 48, man. Born in Hawaii, Gino gave us almost 3 hours of his time while he and his students were traveling from one state to another. Very insightful, in-depth conversation. If you ever want to know what it's like being a wrestler, give that a watch. This afternoon, Meech's Musings, 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tune in for that. And be on the lookout this Thursday, Simply Predicting, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern for NXT Deadline. That's going to wrap things up here on For the Love of Wrestling until tomorrow, when we will be discussing Monday Night Raw. Same bat time, same bat channel. I am, of course, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Thank you all for tuning in this afternoon, this morning, wherever you may be, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you.